So what we're beginning to hear on tour now is that motion creates position. This is a very interesting notion to understand, where if you move your pressure in a certain direction, it'll change the position of your backswing and your hands. Let's just talk about that, for example. After we understand the three key positions for address, transition, and impact, we now want to understand how motion creates position. If all my motion is going towards my heel, obviously I'm going to be in a flat position. If all my motion is going towards my toe, I might be too upright and swing outside. But what we want to do is we want to be able to create the proper swing position by putting our pressure in the right position at the right time. Motion creates position. Remember, these are the practical applications of pressure. So what I'm going to tell you are the basics. If I could only do one thing for a golfer, just one thing, it would be that at the top of their golfer's swing, I'd get 70 to 80% of the pressure on the trail side and fairly evenly balanced 50-50. I'd like to see a little bit more on the heel so we can have counterbalance take effect. I'll explain that later. It's only 0.25 seconds from the top of the swing down to impact. They're not likely to make as many mistakes in that short period of time, and that'll give them a lot more solid contact. After we've gotten the golfer into the stabilized approach, I want to introduce to you a notion that I first heard from Jim McLean and David Lee. It's called the counterbalance approach, where a golfer would have to have a little bit more pressure on their trail heel at or near the top of their backswing so they can effectively counterbalance the weight of their arms. Your arms weigh approximately 30 pounds. Everybody's a little different, but about 30 pounds. 30 pounds is pretty heavy. If you took a cinder block behind you and moved it forward to your lead side, you can see that you want to have more pressure on your heels. You don't want to have all your pressures on your toes because you'd fall over and fall down, which is not a good thing to do in any sport. So the notion of counterbalance suggests that at the top of the swing and or near the top of the swing, you want to have a little bit more pressure on your trail heel. What we're seeing on tour is in and around a range of 55 to 60 on your trail heel. You saw some golfers earlier today that were swinging with about 55, and the line gets even. It creates the counterbalance effect of your weight that wants to move forward because of the mass of your arms. Counterbalancing, to me, from all the years of playing golf, is one of the most important things that I've learned to use BodiTrak with. So this might seem like a lot to learn, but it's not. Everything we're showing you today is already something that you know, but we can now validate with pressure. We're going to talk a bit about peak velocity. What does it really mean? Peak velocity, as we mentioned earlier, is your fastest motion in the lateral direction. Why is it important? Because we want to get to the pressure to the lead side relatively quickly. In fact, almost all the golfers that we see on tour, as soon as they take the club back when the club's parallel and or to the top of the swing, their pressure is already transitioning from the trail side to the lead side. Isn't that interesting? So if we can get our pressure to our lead side faster, that's significant because now we can get what we call the brake effect. But if we get our pressure to the lead side too quickly, we call that overspeed, and it has the same effect as if you don't get the pressure there at all. So there's a sweet spot for every golfer, and it ranges between 100 and 300, and it can range from 200 to 400. But this is your sweet spot. We want to find out from you what your exact pressure points or your best pressure points to optimize your swing are. Baseline assessments are probably the easiest and most practical way to evaluate pressure mapping for golfers. Merely have them stand on the mat with a short iron and maybe a driver too. Let them hit a shot until they hit it well. I guarantee you their trace will look like one of the 7 traces of golf that we've discovered at golfpressuremapping.com. These 7 traces of golf are very consistent. There's a scattered trace, which is all over the place. There's a heel to toe trace. There's a lateral trace. There's a fishhook trace, abbreviated trace, power trace for a long hitter. We're going to show you that later on, and a power trace Z. Every golfer will fall into one of these categories. The goal then becomes to understand that trace and how to efficiently get them to an optimal position. So I've changed the screen to the velocity chart behind me. And in the velocity chart, when you move to the trail side, the white line will be below the baseline. When you move to your lead side, the white line will be above the baseline. Why is that important? We want to understand correctly when you want to stop moving in a lateral direction so we can create what's called the brake effect. The brake effect means is that you get to your lead side quickly, you stop, you pull back and pull up. But if you pull up with a short club, you'll probably hit it thin. You might even hit it behind the ball, but it won't be a good result. But with the driver, however, because the ball's teed up, we want to use some brake effect, so we pull up at impact and hit the ball a little further. It generates more power, more club head speed, etc. And that's really a very important aspect of hitting the ball long. You will see the brake effect in anybody who can hit the ball long. Finally, I just want to consider what types of shoes that you should use. If you have too much pressure moving laterally, side to side, if that line is above and below the baseline in the velocity chart, you may want to use a heavy boot or something that's more stable to eliminate that lateral motion. If you have too much pressure moving heel to toe in a sagittal basis, where the yellow line is above or below the baseline, that's probably not a good thing either. So you may be able to stabilize that by using a pair of shoes that's got a bigger arches, polarizing the weight distribution. If you really see a golfer struggling, they've got a scattered trace going all over the place, just merely get them to take off their shoes and stand barefooted. They have to improve their trace because they're going to need better balance. So the proper selection of footwear is a very significant part of a golfer's game. We work every day in the field with golf pros just like you. We've spent 3.5 years learning how to use BodiTrak. These are some of the easiest, most practical applications of pressure. Terry Hashimoto with BodiTrak, thank you very much.